In this video, we'll be signing our user in. Okay. In the last video, we've been able to get our users details from the OAuth provider. Okay. So now we'll be using those details that we got from the OAuth provider to sign our user in. But just before we sign the user in, we need to create an account for the user in our own database so that we'll be able to tie every activities that the user did in our application to that account. All right. So before we go into the business of the day, there was an omission I made in our last video, which is a potential source of bug. All right. This primary email, all right, it's an object. It's an object that is going to contain the email of the user and this primary property. Okay, so now this email is supposed to be a string. Okay, so what we need to do is to get the email property outside of this primary email object. Okay, so what we are going to do is we are going to use optional chaining just in case this object is undefined or null. All right, so we are going to have dot email, and so that is going to extract the email outside of the object. Okay, so that solves that. Now we can go ahead into the business of the day. Okay, so first off, we need to create an account for our user before we sign them in, just in case the user doesn't have an account with us already. Okay, so we're going to be doing all of that in a try catch block. Okay, because we'll be making a synchronous call to our database. All right, we are going to be doing all of that in a function that we're going to call create user account, just in case the user doesn't have an account with us, and we're going to be passing the OAuth user into the function as an argument. Okay, and we're also going to pass the provider. All right, we can as well write all the logic here inside of this try catch block, but just to make our function small module that we can easily extract out this function into a dedicated file. All right, so I'm going to call this create user account. It's accepting OAuth and data type. Let's define data type here. I'm going to have type is going to be OAuth. All right, so this is going to be an object with ID string. Okay, so that is our data type, and we're going to pass that in here. Okay, it's also accepting the provider. Okay, we already have a type for that. We're going to have OAuth provider. All right, now let's write out our logic. Okay, so what we need to do in this function is similar to what we did when we were dealing with the local sign up. If you go to the actions directory in our local sign up server action, when we wanted to create an account for our user, we first checked if there is an existing user with that email in our database. If there is an existing user, we handle the user that has the same authentication method. All right, if the user doesn't have the same authentication method, then we undo that type of user here. Okay, for users that doesn't have that authentication method. Okay, but for users that doesn't have an account with us entirely, then we created a new account for them. Okay, so that is what we are also going to be doing here, but rather than making it local authentication method, we'll be tying it to the OAuth provider. Okay, so it's as simple as that. All right, let's check if there is an existing user in our database. If user already exists, okay, with this email. All right, the email is our source of truth, so we're going to have const, it's going to be rows. We're going to rename this to be users. Okay, then we're going to have our pool of, okay, we need to import that pool dot query. Now we need to query our database. Okay, so what are the things we need from our database? We are going to have select, then we need our ID, we need auth providers. That's where we are going to check if the user already has an account on this provider. Okay, we also need the username and the role of the user. We're going to be using that to create session for our user. Okay, when we want to sign them in, where email equals $1, the email that we are getting from the OAuth provider. So that's what we use to query our database. Okay, and this is going to be OAuth user dot email. All right, okay, we need to await this. Await, that is going to fetch the user for us if there is a user with that email in our database. All right, just so that we can have type suggestion, let's provide the data type that we're expecting here. So let's call it user role. We can come here, then we're going to have type, or we can make it interface. We achieve the same results using both. Okay, so we're going to have user role. All right, we have an interface. Okay, so that's going to be the expected data structure. Now what we need to check is to check if the user already has this OAuth provider. Okay, let's say the user wants to sign in with Google. We want to check if the user already has Google tied to their account. All right, so I'm going to have if condition here. Okay, it's just the same as what we have here. Where is it? Let's go back up. The first check we did, this where we get the user. Okay, so we can just copy this condition. Same. All right, so we are going to paste that condition here. Right, so this one we are going to is called users here. Okay, and this is also users, but rather than local, we are going to have a provider. All right, I save that. Okay, so a condition can contain a singular. Let me close my sidebar. So if our user already has this current auth provider as part of the auth providers tied to their account, then we don't need to create a new account for the user anymore. All right, so all we just need to do now is to check if the user has made changes to their name. So we're going to have if user dot okay, let's get out a user from the users array. So we're going to have const user is going to be users. Okay, so now we need to check if users dot name, that is the name that is coming from our own database. So if the name we have in our database is not the same as the name that is coming from the OAuth provider, then we need to make updates to the user's name. Okay, so we have OAuth users dot name. All right, so if they are not the same, then we are going to be updating the user name in our own database. Okay, so we're going to have full dot query. So we need to perform an update operation here. I'm going to have update users. Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to set the name of the user to the current name that we're getting from the OAuth provider. Okay, we have where ID equals $1. We are going to be providing the ID is going to be $2. Name is already $1. Okay, now we need to provide the parameters. Okay, the first parameter is going to be the name. Okay, that is going to be OAuth user dot name. All right, the second is going to be the ID. That is going to be user dot ID. All right, so that is going to update the user's name in our own database. Okay, and now since that's all we need to do, then we need to return the user ID and the user role so that we can use that to sign in the user, to create a session for the user. So we're going to return an object that's going to be the ID. We can get that from the user dot ID. Okay, and the role, that is the role we are getting from our database, going to be user dot role. Okay, so that's all we need to do for users that already has an account with the same OAuth provider. We can add the comments here so that it will be explanatory. So I'm going to say undo existing provider. Okay, now after that we need to undo existing users with that email but with different auth provider. Let's say the user wants to log in with Github now, but they've previously logged in with Google, so we need to add Github to their auth providers. Okay, so we're going to have a comment say undo existing users with different OAuth provider, or let's say different provider. Okay, not necessarily OAuth now. So we are going to be having same condition here. All right, it's so I'm just going to be copying this condition. Okay, I'm going to paste that here. All right, and now we need to negate this part. I need the parenthesis here. Okay, first off, let's get out the user. It's going to be users. Okay, and that's going to be the first item. Okay, now since the user is already existing, so what we are just going to do is we are going to add this current OAuth provider as part of the auth providers, and we also need to insert the ID. Okay, possibly Google ID or GitHub ID. So here we're going to await Then we're going to have pull dot query. Okay, so we want to perform an update action since there is already an existing user, but we want to add this new auth provider to the auth providers array. Okay, and we also be inserting the ID, possibly Google ID or GitHub ID. Okay, so we're going to be performing an update operations here. We're updating the users table. All right, so what are the things that we want to set? We want to set the provider ID. Okay, let's say GitHub ID. So for example, we're going to have an interpolation. We're going to have provider underscore ID. Okay, so that is to stand for the column of that provider, possibly Google ID, GitHub ID. Okay, you get that. So I'm going to provide the value as the first parameter, and now we need to append the auth provider to the auth providers array providers. Okay, that is going to be we're going to have array append. We want to append a new provider, so that's going to be auth providers. Okay, then we need to pass the provider, so that's going to be $2. Okay, now we need to add the condition. Okay, so we're going to have where id equals $3. Okay, now we need to provide the parameters. The first parameter is provider ID, so we're going to have OAuth user dot ID. The second is the provider, so we're going to have provider. All right, and the third is the ID that I want to use to filter our users. Okay, so that is going to be user dot ID. You might be wondering that this is a potential room for SQL injection. It is not. Okay, we are just interpolating our provider with this string. Okay, and we've already validated our provider. Okay, you know, at the top where is it, we have this schema to validate that our provider must either be Google or GitHub. Okay, so our provider will always be this. If it is not any of this, then this validation is going to fail and the user is never going to get to this point of creating the account. Okay, so this can never cause a SQL injection. All right, so let your mind be at peace. Okay, now we've updated the users entry. Okay, now we need to return an object that we can use to create a session for the user to sign them in. Okay, so we're going to have ID to be equal to user dot ID, and then we're also going to have role to be user dot role. Okay, now if this condition is not true and this condition is not true, that means there is no existing user at all with that email address. Okay, so what we are going to be doing is to create a new user for that. Okay, so here we are going to have here we are going to be performing an insert operation. We're going to have const. Okay, we're going to have rows, which we are going to call user role. All right, wait. Okay, here we're going to have pool dot query. Okay, so what do we want to do? We want to perform an insert operation. Since we are creating a new user entirely, we're inserting to the users table. Okay, so we need the email. All right, and we need the name. Okay, then the provider ID, either Google ID or GitHub ID. We're going to have interpolation there. We're going to have provider, then underscore ID. Okay, and the auth providers array providers. Okay, so what are the values we want to insert? We have our values. Okay, here we have the email, that is going to be parameter. Name also going to be parameter. What else? I think all of them are going to be parameter. $3 and $4. So what do we need to return? We need to return the ID and the role of the user to be able to create a session for the user. So we have returning ID, comma, role. Okay, now we need to provide the parameters. The email is OAuth user dot email. Okay, the name is also OAuth user dot name. The provider is just a provider. All right, and auth providers is going to be an array of provider. Sorry, this is provider ID. Okay, that is confusing. So that's going to be OAuth provider.id. Okay, so that is what we are going to use to fill the provider ID column, possibly Google ID or GitHub ID. All right, and after doing all of that, we need to return an object that we're going to use to sign the user in. We're going to have ID to be equal to user row dot user row is going to be an array. You have user row dot ID. Okay, and then the role is going to be equal to user row, right? The first object there dot role. Okay, if you want to have type suggestion here, you know currently there is no type suggestion. You can just come here. All right, you are going to have your angle bracket, and you are going to provide the we define the type here, that is the user row type, but we just need the ID and the role, so we're just going to pick those two out of it. Okay, so we are going to paste that here, but we don't need the whole of the user row, so we are going to be picking, have a angle bracket. Okay, so we're going to have pick. Okay, then what are we picking? Just the ID. It's going to be string ID and role. Okay, so those are the things that we need. So here we can just type, if you type this, now we have a suggestion. Okay, so that's TypeScript for you, and that's all we need to do to create a user account. All right, so after creating the user account, where are we? We need to so this is returning the user for us, so let's call it user. Okay, this object we are returning here, this ID and that role, so that is what is being returned to this. Now we need to create a session for our user to sign them in. So I'm going to have await create user session. We already have a function for that, create user session. We're going to import it. Okay, then we're going to pass user into the function. All right, so that's going to create a session for our user and then sign them in. Okay, so after creating the session for our user, then we're going to redirect the user to the dashboard, which is marking the end of the sign up process. We have a dashboard. But what if an error occurred while creating the user account or creating the user session? So we need to handle that here. So if an error occurred, we need to redirect the user to either the sign in page or the sign up page. So we'll be getting that from the page variable. Okay, so we are here, we're going to have template literal. Okay, and then this is going to be the page. All right, you know, we've gotten the page at the top here, either it's sign in page or sign up page. Okay, so we'll be directing the user to that page. All right, and we'll be passing along an error message. Okay, so we have error to be equal to, let's create an error message variable here. Okay, so const error message. Okay, that's going to be equal to template literal, say an error occurred signing you either in or up. Okay, but we're going to make this dynamic. All right, so we're going to have interpolation here. So if action is equal to sign in, okay, we're going to have sign in, then string in. Okay, but if it is not sign in, then this is going to be up. Okay, so we are going to have an error code signing you in or an error code signing you up. Okay, so after that we're going to say please try again. So that's going to be a error message. Here we're going to have a error message. Okay, error message, and that's all about signing a user in with OAuth. Okay, so now let's test out what we've done. Okay, let's do GitHub. That's the one we've done. We've not done Google. We're going to do that after now. So I'm going to let me cancel that. So I'm expected to be redirected back to the home page because I denied the authorization. The home page is being compiled. Okay, you can see now we're back to the home page. So now let me try accepting the permission. Okay, so or let me say granting the permission. I'm going to use GitHub. All right, now I'm going to authorize. Okay, so I should be directed to the dashboard if nothing went wrong. Okay, so something went wrong in the process. Let's see what could be the error. An error occurred, but we don't know what the error is. Let's try to log our error. So where is our try catch? Try catch is something somewhere here. Okay, so let's get our error. I hope it is not related to my query anymore. So I have an error. Okay, I'm going to save that. Okay, now let's try again. I'm going to authorize. Okay, so what is the error? Okay, it has to do with my query again. What is the error message? Okay, syntax error at or near returning. Let me see my query returning. I think that was where we did insert. Okay, so this is the error. There should be no comma here. All right, you can see. I know it must have to do with my my query. Okay, so let's try again now. All right, I'm going to do this. Okay, now I'm going to authorize. All right, so you can see signing with OAuth is now successful. Okay, but just before we proceed into integrating Google into our OAuth process, okay, anytime error occurred, like the last time that we had error when we have an error with our query, so anytime an error occurred, we should have an error message either on our sign-in page or sign-up page to indicate that an error occurred while trying to sign in with either of this OAuth provider. Okay, so we'll be doing all of that in our next video. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so that you'll be notified for subsequent videos. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll be seeing you in the next one.